Imagine a grand English estate, Ravenwood Hall, where a glittering dinner party hides a deadly secret. A young woman, Sophie Marwood, is found stabbed in the library, a letter opener in her heart. Who among the polished guests, each with motives cloaked in lies, wielded the blade? A cryptic ledger, a hidden love letter, a tampered clock, and a single glove point to betrayal. But whose? Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective with his little gray cells, unraveling a web of deceit where love turns lethal. Will the killer's mask fall before another strike? Dive into this classic Agatha Christie-style mystery, where every clue counts, and the truth is as shocking as it is inevitable. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Ravenwood Hall. In the waning days of autumn, when the leaves of Somerset turned to shades of amber and crimson, Ravenwood Hall stood as a sentinel of grandeur amidst the rolling hills. The estate, a sprawling Georgian masterpiece, was cloaked in ivy and history, its tall windows glinting like watchful eyes under the pale October sun. To the casual observer, it was a picture of serene opulence, a place where the wealthy gathered to bask in their own importance. Yet, beneath its polished veneer, a quiet unease stirred, as though the very stones of the house sensed the storm to come. The occasion was a weekend retreat, orchestrated by Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a man whose fortune in shipping had made him a titan in commercial circles, but whose personal life was a tapestry of whispered scandals. Sir Reginald, nearing 60, was a widower of 3 years, his late wife's death a subject of polite avoidance. His invitations to Ravenwood Hall were coveted, for they promised fine dining, intellectual discourse, and the chance to mingle with the elite. This particular weekend, however, carried an undercurrent of purpose, though none of the guests could agree on what it was. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal friend and occasional chronicler of Hercule Poirot's exploits, arrived at Ravenwood Hall on a crisp Friday afternoon. The train from London had been delayed, and Hastings, with his military punctuality, was mildly irritated as he stepped from the chauffeured car onto the gravel drive. He adjusted his scarf, his breath visible in the chilly air, and took in the scene. The house loomed before him, its symmetry both imposing and inviting. Carriages and motor cars lined the drive, their drivers unloading trunks for the weekend's guests. Hastings had been invited at the insistence of Sir Reginald, who had met him at a regimental dinner some months prior. The invitation had been vague, mentioning only a matter of some delicacy that required a man of Hastings' discretion. Intrigued, and sensing an opportunity to coax his friend Poirot from retirement, Hastings had written to the little Belgian detective, urging him to join.
Air of mystery at Ravenwood Hall intrigues me. I shall arrive, but not, I think, as an invited guest. The little grey cells, they demand a challenge. Inside the grand hall, Hastings was greeted by the butler, Mr. Grayson, a man of impeccable decorum whose lined face betrayed no emotion. The hall was a marvel of polished oak and gleaming chandeliers, its walls adorned with portraits of Ashbournes long past. The air carried the faint scent of beeswax and lavender, and the murmur of voices drifted from the drawing-room. "Ah, Captain Hastings," came a hearty voice. Sir Reginald himself descended the staircase, his broad frame clad in a tailored suit, his silver hair catching the light. "You're late, but no matter. Come, meet the others. We're a lively bunch this weekend." Hastings followed, noting the slight strain in Sir Reginald's smile. The drawing-room was a hive of polite chatter, the guests arranged in small clusters. Sir Reginald introduced them with the practiced ease of a host. First was Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, Sir Reginald's sister-in-law, a statuesque woman in her 40s whose sharp eyes missed nothing. Her emerald gown was a touch too grand for a country weekend, Hastings thought, and her smile was as calculated as a chess move. Next was Dr. Malcolm Finch, a physician and old friend of Sir Reginald's, whose nervous habit of adjusting his spectacles belied his otherwise calm demeanour. His wife, Clara Finch, was a quiet woman with a penchant for sketching, her delicate hands clutching a leather-bound notebook. Then there was Victor Crane, a brash young financier whose booming laugh filled the room, though his eyes darted restlessly. His fiancée, Miss Evelyn Ward, clung to his arm, her beauty marred by a nervous tic at the corner of her mouth. Rounding out the party were Mrs. Lavinia Holt, a widowed novelist whose Gothic tales had earned her a modest fame, and Mr. Thomas Redfern, a solicitor who handled Sir Reginald's legal affairs. Redfern was a thin, meticulous man whose every word seemed weighed for precision. Finally, there was Miss Sophie Marwood, Sir Reginald's private secretary, a young woman of striking intelligence whose quiet demeanour masked a keen observational skill. As Hastings exchanged pleasantries, he felt the weight of unspoken tensions. Lady Beatrice's gaze lingered too long on Victor Crane, while Clara Finch seemed to shrink from her husband's touch. Sir Reginald, for all his joviality, checked his pocket watch with an almost obsessive frequency. The clock on the mantel struck 5, its chimes echoing like a warning. Dinner was announced, and the party moved to the dining room, where a table gleamed with silver and crystal. The meal was exquisite: roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and a claret that Hastings privately thought divine.
From Victor Crane. Mrs. Holt, ever the storyteller, hinted at a dark secret within Ravenwood's walls. Her words met with uneasy chuckles. As the dessert course arrived, Sir Reginald rose, tapping his glass for attention. "My friends," he began, his voice carrying a theatrical weight, "this weekend is more than a gathering of old acquaintances. I have called you here to address a matter of grave importance. There is a truth, long buried, that must now come to light." A hush fell over the table. Hastings, seated near the window, felt a chill that had little to do with the autumn air. Before Sir Reginald could continue, a piercing scream shattered the silence. It came from the direction of the library, a room adjacent to the dining hall. The guests froze, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Sir Reginald's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "Grayson!" he barked, striding toward the door. The butler appeared, his composure shaken. "Sir, it's Miss Marwood. She's in the library. I fear something terrible has happened." Hastings leapt to his feet, his soldier's instincts kicking in. The guests followed, a chaotic procession down the corridor. The library door stood ajar, revealing a scene that would haunt Hastings for days to come. Sophie Marwood lay crumpled on the floor, her face pale, her eyes wide with a final, frozen terror. A letter opener, its handle ornate with silver filigree, protruded from her chest, and a pool of blood stained the Persian rug beneath her. Lady Beatrice gasped, clutching Dr. Finch's arm. Victor Crane swore under his breath, while Evelyn Ward turned away, trembling. Mrs. Holt's hand flew to her mouth, and Redfern's face was a mask of grim calculation. Clara Finch, oddly, remained silent, her eyes fixed on the body, as though committing every detail to memory. Hastings knelt beside the body, checking for a pulse he knew he would not find. "She's dead," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the horror. He glanced at the clock above the fireplace. 8:47 p.m. The precision of the time struck him, though he could not yet say why. Sir Reginald, his face ashen, turned to Grayson. "Lock the doors. No one leaves this house until we know what happened." He paused, then added, "And send for Hercule Poirot. He's staying at the village inn, I believe. Tell him Ravenwood Hall has need of his little grey cells." As the guests retreated to the drawing room, their whispers a cacophony of fear and accusation, Hastings lingered in the library. He studied the scene, the letter opener, the overturned chair, the single glove lying near the hearth. Something about the glove nagged at him, but the thought slipped away as Grayson returned, confirming that Poirot had been summoned.
Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows of Ravenwood Hall. Hastings felt a shiver, not of cold, but of certainty.
In this house, someone seated at that very dinner table had plunged a blade into Sophie Marwood's heart. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring logic and piercing insight, was their only hope of unmasking the killer. Chapter 2. The Crime at Ravenwood Hall. The library of Ravenwood Hall, bathed in the dim glow of gas lamps, was a tableau of tragedy. Sophie Marwood's lifeless form lay upon the Persian rug, the silver-handled letter opener protruding from her chest like an accusation cast in metal. The air was heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the oppressive silence that follows sudden death. The guests, ushered back to the drawing-room by a grim-faced Grayson, left Captain Arthur Hastings alone with the scene, his mind racing to catalogue every detail before the inevitable chaos of investigation began. Hastings, though no stranger to death from his days in the war, felt a pang of unease. Sophie Marwood had been a quiet presence at dinner, her intelligent eyes darting from face to face as though reading the room's unspoken secrets. Now, those eyes stared blankly at the coffered ceiling, and Hastings could not shake the sense that she had known her fate was near. He crouched beside her, careful not to disturb the scene, and noted the position of her body, one arm flung outward, the other bent at an awkward angle, as though she had reached for something in her final moments. The single glove near the hearth, black, leather, and curiously small, caught his eye again. It seemed out of place, but why? The clock on the mantel read 8:52 p.m., its relentless ticking a stark contrast to the stillness of the room. Hastings glanced at the letter opener, its blade buried deep. The wound suggested force, precision, and perhaps anger. He scanned the shelves, noting a few books askew and a crystal decanter on a side table, its stopper missing. A glass lay shattered on the floor, its contents, a faint amber liquid, spilled across the rug. Whiskey, perhaps, or brandy. The details were fragments of a puzzle, and Hastings knew only one man could assemble them with certainty. The sound of footsteps broke his reverie. Sir Reginald Ashbourne entered, his face a mask of controlled grief, though his hands trembled as he clutched a handkerchief. "Hastings," he said hoarsely, "this is a nightmare. Sophie she was indispensable. Who could do such a thing?" Hastings rose, his voice steady. "We'll find out, Sir Reginald. Poirot is on his way. He'll see what we cannot." Sir Reginald nodded, but his eyes darted to the body, then away. "I should have known," he muttered almost to himself.
Where Hercule Poirot stood, a diminutive figure in a meticulously tailored overcoat, his mustache waxed to perfection. His green eyes gleamed with an intensity that belied his calm demeanor. A small valise rested at his feet, and he was adjusting his gloves with the precision of a surgeon. "Mon ami," Poirot greeted, his voice warm but laced with purpose. "You have called me to a most distressing scene, n'est-ce pas? A young woman, dead, and a house full of secrets. Tell me everything." Hastings recounted the evening. The dinner, Sir Reginald's cryptic announcement, the scream, and the discovery of Sophie Marwood's body. Poirot listened, his head tilted slightly, his fingers steepled before him. When Hastings mentioned the glove, Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A glove, you say? Singular. And where is it now?" "In the library, near the hearth," Hastings replied. "It's small, likely a woman's." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Bon, let us see this scene of tragedy. The little grey cells, they are already at work."
The library was as Hastings had left it, though the air seemed colder now. Poirot moved with deliberate grace, his eyes sweeping the room like a painter assessing a canvas. He paused at the body, his gaze lingering on the letter opener. "A curious choice of weapon," he murmured. "Not a knife, not a dagger, but a letter opener, a tool of the desk, used for violence. This speaks to opportunity, perhaps, or impulse." He knelt, examining Sophie's hands. No defensive wounds, he noted. She did not struggle. Either she was taken by surprise, or she knew her attacker and did not expect the blow. He stood, brushing his trousers, and turned to the glove. Picking it up with a handkerchief, he studied it closely. Fine leather, well worn, but only one. Where is its mate, and why here? Hastings watched, marveling at Poirot's method. Every movement was precise. Every question, a probe into the unseen. Poirot moved to the decanter, sniffing the spilled liquid. "Whiskey," he confirmed. "And the glass is broken, but not by accident. See the shards? They are scattered too widely for a simple drop." Sir Reginald, who had lingered silently, spoke up. "Sophie often worked late in the library. She was transcribing my correspondence. Perhaps she surprised a thief." Poirot's smile was polite but dismissive. "A thief, Sir Reginald? In a house full of guests, with a letter opener as the weapon? None. This is personal. The library. It is not a place of chance encounters. It is a place of purpose." The police arrived shortly after, led by Inspector Crowley, a gruff man with a penchant for quick conclusions. He surveyed the scene, declared it a crime of passion, and began questioning the servants. Poirot, however, requested permission.
Poirot. They're a shifty bunch. In the drawing room, the guests were a study in unease. Lady Beatrice sat rigidly, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Dr. Finch adjusted his spectacles repeatedly, while Clara sketched furiously in her notebook, her eyes avoiding the room. Victor Crane paced, his earlier bravado replaced by agitation. And Evelyn Ward clung to him, her face pale. Mrs. Holt murmured about cursed houses, while Redfern sat apart, his expression inscrutable. Poirot stood before them, his presence commanding despite his small stature. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice smooth as velvet. "A terrible crime has occurred. Mademoiselle Marwood is dead, and one among us knows why. I, Hercule Poirot, will find the truth. But I require your cooperation. Tell me, what did you see or hear before the scream?" The room erupted in a chorus of denials. Lady Beatrice claimed she was adjusting her shawl in the dining room. Dr. Finch said he was discussing a medical journal with Redfern. Clara insisted she was admiring the chandelier. Victor and Evelyn swore they were whispering to each other, while Mrs. Holt said she was lost in thought, imagining a plot for her next novel. Redfern, with his lawyer's precision, stated he was checking his pocket watch. 8:45 p.m., he noted, just before the scream. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You are all so precise, yet so vague. The time, it is important, yes? And yet, no one saw Mademoiselle Marwood leave the dining room. Curious, no?" Hastings caught the glint in Poirot's eye. He was already sifting through the lies, though what he saw, Hastings could not guess. As the guests dispersed to their rooms under Crowley's orders, Poirot lingered, his gaze fixed on the fireplace. "Hastings," he said softly, "this glove, it bothers me. It is a clue, but to what? And the whiskey? Why spill it? The answers, they are here, in the details." Outside, the wind howled, and Ravenwood Hall seemed to close in around them. Hastings felt a chill, knowing that Poirot's little grey cells were already weaving a net to catch a killer. But who among the guests, each with their secrets, their motives, had struck the fatal blow? And what truth had Sir Reginald been about to reveal before death silenced his secretary. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The night had deepened over Ravenwood Hall, its shadows lengthening as though to cloak the secrets within its walls. The wind, relentless in its moaning, battered the tall windows, and the gas lamps flickered, casting uncertain light across the drawing-room where the guests sat in uneasy silence. Capped in almost theatrical calm, his green eyes, sharp as cut glass, moved from face to face, noting every twitch, every averted glance. Inspector Crowley had retreated to the library to oversee the removal of Sophie's body, leaving Poirot to begin his methodical inquiry. Hastings, ever the observer of his friend's genius, marvelled at how Poirot could transform a room of strangers into a chessboard, each guest a piece in his intricate game. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice precise and resonant, "the tragedy of Mademoiselle Marwood demands our attention. I, Hercule Poirot, have been called to Ravenwood Hall not by chance but by necessity. A crime has been committed, and the truth, it hides among you. I ask only that you speak plainly, for the little grey cells, they thrive on order and clarity." Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, seated on a velvet settee, raised an imperious eyebrow. "Mr. Poirot, surely you don't suspect us? Sophie was a secretary, a nobody. This must be the work of some vagrant or disgruntled servant." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "A nobody, madame. No, Mademoiselle Marwood was the keeper of secrets, the recorder of Sir Reginald's affairs. Such a person is never a nobody. Tell me, when did you last see her alive?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fingers tightening on her fan. "At dinner, of course. She was at the table, silent as always. I paid her no mind." "And you, Dr. Finch?" Poirot turned to the physician, who was nervously polishing his spectacles. "You are a man of science, observant by nature. Did you notice Mademoiselle Marwood leave the dining-room?" Dr. Finch cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. I believe she excused herself just before Sir Reginald's speech. Said she needed to fetch some papers from the library. I thought nothing of it." Clara Finch, seated beside her husband, looked up from her sketching. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. She seemed distracted at dinner, kept glancing at Sir Reginald, as though waiting for something. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Waiting, madame? That is most interesting. And you, Mr. Crane?" He turned to the financier, who had ceased his pacing to lean against a bookcase, his arms crossed. Victor Crane's laugh was forced. "Look, I was too busy talking to Evelyn to notice some secretary. She was alive when we sat down to dinner, dead when we found her, that's all I know." Evelyn Ward, clinging to Crane's arm, nodded vigorously. "We were together the whole time. We didn't see anything." Poirot's gaze lingered on the couple, his expression unreadable. "Together? Toujours? A most convenient alibi. And you, Mrs. Holt?" He turned to the novelist, whose Gothic sensibilities seemed to revel in the drama. Mrs. Lavinia Holt leaned forward, her eyes bright with intrigue. "I saw Sophie slip out just as Sir Reginald began his speech. She looked furtive, if I may say so, as though want to be noticed." "Furtive," Poirot repeated, savouring the word. "And you, Mr. Redfern? A solicitor? A man of precision? What did your watch tell you of this evening?" Thomas Redfern, his thin face pale, consulted his pocket watch as though it held the answers. "I noted the time at 8:45 p.m., just before the scream. I was in the dining room, discussing a legal matter with Dr. Finch. Sophie was gone by then." Poirot nodded, his fingers brushing his moustache. "Bon. So Mademoiselle Marwood leaves the dining room, perhaps at 8:40, perhaps earlier. She is found dead at 8:47 by Captain Hastings' observation. A narrow window, no? And yet no one saw her go. No one heard her cry until the end." Hastings, standing by the fireplace, felt a stir of admiration. Poirot was painting a picture, each stroke a question that tightened the net around the truth. He glanced at Sir Reginald, who had remained silent, his face drawn.
"Sir Reginald," Hastings ventured, "you said Sophie was indispensable. Did she know something dangerous?" Sir Reginald's eyes flickered with something like fear. "She was my secretary, Captain. She handled my correspondence, my accounts. Nothing more." Poirot's head tilted. "Nothing more, Sir Reginald? Yet you planned to reveal a truth this evening. A truth that required the presence of these particular guests. What was it?" The room tensed. Lady Beatrice's fan snapped shut. Victor Crane's jaw tightened, and Clara Finch's pencil paused mid-sketch. Sir Reginald hesitated, then shook his head. "It was a private matter, Mr. Poirot, a family concern. It has no bearing on this tragedy." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "We shall see, Sir Reginald. The truth, it has a way of revealing itself." Inspector Crowley re-entered, his boots heavy on the polished floor. "Right, Mr. Poirot. The body's been taken to the village for examination. Looks like a single stab wound, clean and deep. The letter opener was wiped, no fingerprints. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." "No fingerprints," Poirot mused. "Yet a glove lies by the hearth. Curious, no?" He turned to the guests. "I will examine the library further, but first I ask you to remain in the house. The doors are locked, the windows secure. The killer, he is among us." A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. The little grey cells, they require order. I will speak with each of you alone tomorrow. For now, rest, if you can." As the guests dispersed, their faces a gallery of fear and defiance, Poirot beckoned Hastings to the library. The room was now empty of the body, but the blood-stained rug remained, a grim reminder.
It was spilled deliberately. The chair. It was knocked over in haste, not struggle. And the books. See how these three are askew? Someone searched this shelf, perhaps in a hurry. Hastings frowned. But what were they looking for? And why kill Sophie? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, mon ami, is the heart of the matter. Mademoiselle Marwood knew something worth killing for. And the killer, he or she, is clever, but not clever enough to escape Hercule Poirot. As they left the library, the clock struck 10, its chimes echoing through the silent house. Hastings felt a chill, not from the wind, but from the certainty that Ravenwood Hall held more secrets than even Poirot could yet fathom. The guests, each with their alibis and motives, were pieces in a puzzle that grew more complex with every passing hour. And somewhere among them, a murderer waited, their mask of innocence still intact. The morning sun struggled through the heavy clouds over Ravenwood Hall, casting a pallid light across the estate. The grandeur of the previous evening had faded, replaced by a sombre air that clung to the walls like damp. The guests, confined to the house by Inspector Crowley's orders, moved with the restless caution of caged animals. Breakfast was a subdued affair, the clink of cutlery and murmured pleasantries unable to mask the tension that simmered beneath. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated at the long mahogany table, observed the group with a soldier's eye, noting the strained smiles and furtive glances. Hercule Poirot, however, was absent, having declared his intention to examine the library at first light. Hastings sipped his coffee, his thoughts returning to the previous night. Sophie Marwood's death had been no random act. The precision of the wound, the wiped letter opener, the solitary glove, all pointed to a calculated mind. Yet the motive remained elusive. Was it Sir Reginald's mysterious truth that had sparked the murder, or was Sophie, with her quiet intelligence, a threat to someone's carefully guarded secret? The drawing room, where Poirot had summoned the guests for individual interviews, was a study in elegance. Velvet drapes, a roaring fire, and a portrait of a stern-faced Ashbourne ancestor glaring down from above the mantel.
Poirot stood by the window, his small frame silhouetted against the grey sky, his hands clasped behind his back. His moustache was immaculate, his demeanour serene, but Hastings knew that beneath this calm exterior, the little grey cells were working at a feverish pace. "Mon ami," Poirot said as Hastings entered, "you have observed the guests this morning. Tell me, what do you see?" Hastings hesitated, choosing his words. "They're rattled, Poirot. Lady Beatrice is sharp as ever. Mrs. Holt seems almost excited, as though she's writing this all in her head. And Redfern, he's too calm, like he's hiding something." Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. "Bien observé, Hastings. The human heart, it betrays itself in the smallest gestures. Now let us begin. We shall speak with each guest, and the truth, it will begin to emerge." The first to be summoned was Lady Beatrice Ashburn. She swept into the room, her posture regal, her emerald eyes cold. "Mr. Poirot," she said, seating herself with deliberate grace, "this is a distasteful business. I trust you'll resolve it quickly." Poirot's smile was disarming. "Madame, I seek only the truth. Tell me of your relationship with Mademoiselle Marwood. You called her a nobody, yet she was close to your brother-in-law." Lady Beatrice's lips thinned. "Sophie was efficient, nothing more. She handled Reginald's correspondence, his appointments. I had little to do with her." "And yet," Poirot said, his voice soft, "you noticed her at dinner. You said she was silent. Did you see her leave the dining room?" "I told you. I was adjusting my shawl. I didn't see her go." Her tone was sharp, but her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve, a small betrayal of unease. Poirot leaned forward. "And this truth Sir Reginald spoke of, what do you know of it?" Lady Beatrice's eyes flickered. "Reginald is prone to dramatics. He likely meant some business matter. He's been revising his will, you know. Perhaps Sophie knew too much about it." Poirot's expression remained impassive. "Merci, madame. That will be all for now." As Lady Beatrice departed, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. That pause. She knows more about this truth than she's letting on." Poirot nodded. "Oui, mon ami. But what? We shall see." Next was Dr. Malcolm Finch, whose nervous energy filled the room. He sat, then stood, then sat again, his spectacles slipping down his nose. "Mr. Poirot, I'm a doctor, not a detective. I don't know what you expect from me." "I expect only the truth, Doctor," Poirot said smoothly. "You saw Mademoiselle Marwood leave the dining room. Did you notice anything unusual about her demeanour?" Finch hesitated, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "She seemed agitated. She dropped her napkin as she stood and she didn't pick it up. I thought she was just tired." "And your wife, Madame Finch? She had remarked on Mademoiselle Marwood's distraction. Were you both so observant?" Finch flushed. "Clara notices everything. She's always sketching, always watching. I was talking to Redfern about a legal case, so I wasn't paying much attention." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A legal case at dinner? Most curious. And where were you at a Library with the others." Poirot dismissed him with a nod, and Clara Finch entered next. Her delicate frame seemed to shrink under Poirot's gaze, a sketchbook clutched to her chest. "Madame," Poirot began, "your husband says you are observant. What did you see of Mademoiselle Marwood last night?" Clara's voice was barely audible. "She was nervous. She kept looking at Sir Reginald, then at her watch. When she left, she moved quickly, like she was afraid of being followed." "Afraid?" Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. "And you, madame? Where were you when the scream came?" "I was in the dining room, near the window. I was sketching the chandelier." She opened her sketchbook, revealing a detailed drawing of the crystal fixture, time-stamped 8:30 p.m. Poirot studied the sketch, his fingers brushing the page. "Exquisite, madame.
And so precise. You are a woman of detail, no? Clara blushed, murmuring her thanks as she left. Victor Crane was next, his brash confidence replaced by a defensive scowl. Look, Poirot, I don't know what you're fishing for. Evelyn and I were together all night, we didn't see Sophie leave, and we didn't hear anything until that scream. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Monsieur Crane, you are a man of business, yes? You understand motive. Why would someone wish Mademoiselle Marwood harm? Crane shrugged, his eyes darting to the door. Maybe she was blackmailing someone. Secretaries hear things, don't they? All I know is I didn't do it. Evelyn Ward, interviewed next, echoed Crane's story, her voice trembling. We were together, Mr. Poirot. Victor's telling the truth. Sophie she was kind to me. I can't imagine why anyone would hurt her. Mrs. Lavinia Holt followed, her Gothic imagination in full bloom. Mr. Poirot, this house is cursed. I felt it the moment I arrived. Sophie must have stumbled on something dark, perhaps a secret in Sir Reginald's papers. Poirot's eyes twinkled. A curse, madame, or perhaps a human hand, guided by greed or fear. Where were you at 8:45? Lost in thought, Mrs. Holt said dreamily. I was imagining a scene for my next novel. The dining room was so atmospheric. Finally, Thomas Redfern entered, his solicitor's precision evident in his measured speech. Mr. Poirot, I was with Dr. Finch, discussing a contract. I noted the time, 8:45, because I always check my watch before a significant event. The scream came moments later. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. A contract? At such an hour? You are a busy man, Monsieur Redfern. And Mademoiselle Marwood, did she ever assist you with Sir Reginald's legal affairs? Redfern's eyes. Overturned chair. These do not lie. We must return to the library. Back in the library, Poirot examined the shelves, his fingers tracing the spines of the misaligned books. These were moved, Hastings, but not by accident. Someone searched for something, a document perhaps, or a letter, and the whiskey glass broken deliberately. Why? Hastings frowned. To make it look like a struggle? Perhaps, Poirot said, or to hide something else, the truth. It is close, mon ami, but we must tread carefully. The killer watches, and they are clever. As the clock struck noon, Ravenwood Hall seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Poirot's next move. Hastings felt the weight of the mystery pressing down, knowing that each interview had revealed not answers, but more questions. Who had Sophie Marwood feared, and what secret was worth her life? Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The afternoon light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Ravenwood Hall, casting a lattice of shadows across the drawing room where Captain Arthur Hastings sat, his notebook open on his lap. The interviews conducted by Hercule Poirot had left the guests subdued, their earlier agitation replaced by a wary silence. Hastings, ever the faithful chronicler, jotted down observations, though he felt as though he were grasping at mist. Poirot, meanwhile, had retreated to the library once more, insisting that the scene of the crime held secrets yet to be uncovered. But it was in the drawing room, among the whispered accusations and nervous glances, that the first red herrings began to surface. Inspector Crowley, with his blunt efficiency, had taken charge of the investigation in his own way, focusing on the servants and the physical evidence. He strode into the drawing room, his boots leaving faint traces of mud on the polished floor, and announced his findings with the confidence of a man who preferred simple solutions. "We've got something," he declared, holding up a small, tarnished key wrapped in a handkerchief. "Found this in the garden, near the library window. It is not one of the house keys, likely belongs to a trunk or a desk, and there's a smudge of blood on it." The guests stirred,
their eyes darting to one another. Lady Beatrice Ashburn's lips pursed, as though she found the inspector's theatrics distasteful. Victor Crane, his earlier bravado returning, scoffed. "A key? That's your evidence? Could belong to anyone." Crowley's eyes narrowed. Or it could belong to someone who dropped it while escaping the library. The window was unlatched, you know. Someone could have slipped out after the deed. Hastings felt a twinge of doubt. The unlatched window was suggestive, but Poirot had dismissed the idea of an outsider. The locked doors, the confined setting, everything pointed to someone within the house. Yet Crowley's discovery stirred the temper, made him an easy target. "Mr. Crane," Crowley said, turning to the financier, "you were awfully quick to dismiss the key. Care to tell me where you were between 8:40 and 8:47 last night?" Crane's face reddened. "I told you. I was with Evelyn, in the dining room. Ask her." Evelyn Ward nodded vigorously, her hands twisting in her lap. "It's true, Inspector. We were together. Victor didn't leave my side." Crowley's skepticism was palpable. "Convenient, that. And you, Mr. Crane, you got a reputation for sharp dealings. Maybe Miss Marwood knew something about your business, something you didn't want getting out." Crane leapt to his feet, his fists clenched. "That's slander. I'd no reason to harm Sophie. She was just a secretary." Sir Reginald, who had been silent, intervened. "Inspector, surely you're not suggesting one of my guests is a murderer without proof? That key could have been dropped days ago." Crowley grunted, unconvinced. "We'll see about that. I've sent for a locksmith to test it against every lock in the house." Hastings watched the exchange, his mind racing. The key was a distraction, he was certain. Too convenient, too neatly placed. Poirot would call it a red herring, a deliberate attempt to mislead. But who had placed it there? And why? As Crowley left to continue his inquiries, Poirot returned, his expression serene, but his eyes alight with purpose. He had spent the morning in the library, examining every detail with his characteristic precision. Now he gathered the guests once more, his small frame commanding their attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began. "The good Inspector Crowley believes he has found a clue, a key stained with blood dropped in the garden. It is perhaps significant. But I, Hercule Poirot, am more interested in what is not so easily seen, the secrets of the heart." Lady Beatrice sniffed. "Really, Mr. Poirot, must you be so theatrical? If there's a key, surely it points to an intruder." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "An intruder, madame? No. The library window was unlatched, yes, but the mud outside is undisturbed. No footprints, no signs of entry. The key, it is a distraction, placed to lead us astray. But from what?" The guests exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Malcolm Finch adjusted his spectacles, his voice trembling. "You're saying someone here planted it? But why?" "To shift suspicion, Doctor," Poirot said simply. "The killer is clever, but not clever enough. They wish us to chase shadows, but I, Poirot, chase the truth." Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. "What did you find in the library?" "Small, yes, but it fits no one in this room perfectly. Curious, no?" Mrs. Lavinia Holt, her novelist imagination stirred, leaned forward. "A glove that fits no one? That's positively gothic, Mr. Poirot. Perhaps it's a symbol, a message from the killer." Poirot's smile was indulgent. "A symbol, madame? Perhaps. But I prefer facts. The glove was left deliberately, just as the key was placed. These are the red herrings, meant to distract from the true motive." Thomas Redfern, the solicitor, spoke up, his voice measured. "And what motive do you suggest, Mr. Poirot?" "Sophie was a secretary, nothing more. Why kill her? Poirot's gaze was piercing. Mademoiselle Marwood was more than a secretary, Monsieur Redfern. She was the keeper of Sir Reginald's secrets, the recorder of his affairs. She knew something dangerous, and someone in this room feared her knowledge. The accusation hung in the air, heavy as the storm clouds outside. Clara Finch's pencil scratched furiously in her sketchbook, her eyes fixed on the page. Victor Crane muttered something under his breath, while Evelyn clung to his arm. Lady Beatrice's fan snapped open, a shield against Poirot's scrutiny. Dr. Finch looked ill, and Sir Reginald's face was a mask of controlled anguish. Poirot continued, his voice soft but relentless. "I have examined the library, and I have found a discrepancy. The clock on the mantel, it is 5 minutes slow. The scream was heard at 8:47 by Captain Hastings' watch, but the library clock read 8:42 when the body was found. This is no accident. Someone tampered with the time." Hastings frowned, puzzled. "But why, Poirot? What does the clock have to do with it?" "The clock, mon ami, is the key to the alibi. Someone wishes us to believe the murder happened later than it did. But why? To protect themselves or another?" Inspector Crowley re-entered, his expression triumphant. "The key fits a lockbox in Miss Marwood's room. We found it hidden under her bed. Empty, mind you, but it had papers inside recently. Smudges of ink. Fresh ones." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "An empty lockbox, Inspector? Most interesting. And what papers might it have held?" Crowley shrugged. "No idea, but it's clear she was hiding something. Maybe she was blackmailing someone, and they turned on her." The guests stirred, their denials overlapping. Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Enough! The lockbox, the key, the glove, these are pieces of the puzzle, but not the whole. I will visit Mademoiselle Marwood's room myself. And I warn you all, the truth, it cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot." As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to Sophie's room, a small but tidy chamber on the second floor. The lockbox,
Confession. But where is it now? He searched the room, his movements methodical. Under a loose floorboard, he found a single sheet of paper folded tightly. Unfolding it, he read silently, and passed it to Hastings. It was a draft of a letter addressed to Sir Reginald, warning him of a betrayal close to home. The handwriting was Sophie's, but the letter was unfinished, the ink still faintly wet. Hastings felt a chill. "She knew something, Poirot. Something worth killing for." "Oui," Poirot said softly. "And the killer, they are among us, watching. But they have made a mistake. The red herrings, they point not away from the truth, but toward it." As they left the room, the clock in the hall struck 3, its chimes a reminder of time's relentless march. Hastings knew that Poirot's net was tightening, but the killer remained a shadow, hidden behind a veil of lies and misdirection. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The afternoon at Ravenwood Hall hung heavy with the weight of suspicion, the air thick with the scent of rain and the unspoken fears of its occupants. The guests, confined to the house by Inspector Crowley's orders, drifted between the drawing-room and their private chambers, their movements shadowed by the knowledge that a murderer walked among them. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated in the library where Sophie Marwood had met her end, felt the room's oppressive silence pressing against him. The blood-stained rug had been removed, but the memory of the young secretary's lifeless form lingered, as did the unanswered questions surrounding her death. Hercule Poirot, however, was undeterred by the gloom. He moved through the library with the precision of a watchmaker, his small frame darting from one detail to another. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to see beyond the physical, peeling back layers of deception to uncover the truth beneath. Hastings watched, marveling at his friend's ability to find significance in the mundane. Poirot had declared that the morning's interviews had revealed much, but it was in the library, he insisted, that the true heart of the mystery lay. "Mon ami,"
Poirot said, pausing by the fireplace. "You have seen the glove, the broken glass, the tampered clock. These are not mere objects. They are the language of the crime, and today we shall find a clue that speaks louder than the rest." Hastings leaned forward, his notebook open. "What have you found, Poirot?" "The letter in Sophie's room, it mentioned a betrayal. That's surely the key." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of amusement or exasperation. Hastings could never quite tell. "The letter, oui, it is important, but it is incomplete, a fragment. The killer took the rest, or perhaps Sophie never finished it. No, Hastings, we must look closer, to the smallest detail." He moved to the desk where Sophie had worked, its surface cluttered with papers, an inkwell, and a blotter. Poirot's fingers brushed the blotter, lifting it to reveal a faint impression of handwriting. "Regardez," he said, holding it to the light. "The pressure of a pen, the ghost of words. Sophie wrote something here, something she pressed hard to record." Hastings squinted at the blotter, seeing only indistinct smudges. "Can you read it, Poirot?" "Not yet," Poirot admitted, "but with the right method, we shall." He produced a small mirror from his valise, angling it to catch the light and reflect the impressions. Slowly, words emerged. Reginald, trust, betrayed, ledger. The rest was illegible, but Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph. "A ledger, Hastings. Sophie wrote of a ledger. This is no ordinary secretary's note. It is a clue to her death." "A ledger?" Hastings frowned. "You mean financial records? Sir Reginald's accounts?" "Précisément," Poirot said, setting the blotter down. "Mademoiselle Marwood. She was transcribing Sir Reginald's correspondence, yes, but also his accounts. A ledger contains secrets, debts, payments, perhaps even fraud. Someone did not wish her to reveal what she found." Poirot's attention shifted to the bookshelf, where the 3 legal texts remained askew. He pulled them down, examining their spines. "These books, they were moved, but not read. See the dust on the edges, undisturbed, except where fingers gripped them." He opened one, revealing a hollowed-out compartment. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded tightly, its edges yellowed. Poirot unfolded it with care, revealing a list of names and figures, written in Sophie's neat hand. "A fragment of the ledger," he murmured. "Sums paid to V.C. and T.R., significant sums." "V.C. Victor Crane?" Hastings asked. "And T.R. Thomas Redfern?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, slipping the paper into his pocket. "But we must not leap to conclusions. The initials, they may be a coincidence, or a trap. The killer is clever, Hastings, and they know I am watching." As Poirot continued his examination, Inspector Crowley entered, his face flushed with frustration. "Mr. Poirot, we've searched the grounds again. No footprints, no signs of an intruder. That key in the garden, it's looking more like a plant, just as you said." Poirot nodded, his expression serene. "The key, it is a distraction, Inspector. But this," he gestured to the blotter and the hidden paper, "this is the truth. Mademoiselle Marwood was killed because she knew too much about a ledger, a record of transactions that someone wished to keep hidden." Crowley's brow furrowed. "A ledger? You're saying this was about money?" "Money, power, betrayal," Poirot said. "The motives, they are eternal. But we must confirm the details." Preparing for breakfast. "The footman swears he was in the stables. All accounted for, though I don't trust any of them completely." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The servants? They are part of the puzzle, but not the heart. The heart lies with the guests. I must speak with Sir Reginald again." Sir Reginald was found in his study, a glass of brandy in hand, despite the early hour. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice heavy. "This business with Sophie, it's torn me apart. She was like a daughter to me." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "A daughter, Sir Reginald?"
Yet you spoke of a truth last night, a truth that required her presence. Tell me, what is this ledger she wrote of? And why did it cost her life?" Sir Reginald paled, his hand trembling. "A ledger? I don't know what you mean. Sophie handled my correspondence, my schedules. If she kept a ledger, it was routine." "Routine?" Poirot's voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. "No, monsieur. This ledger contains payments to VC and TR. Large sums. Who are they? And why did Sophie fear betrayal?" Sir Reginald set his glass down, his jaw tightening. "I don't know any VC or TR. You're mistaken, Poirot. This is a tragedy, not a conspiracy." Poirot studied him, then nodded. "Very well, Sir Reginald. But the truth, it will not remain hidden." As they left the study, Hastings whispered, "He's lying, isn't he, about the ledger?" "Oui," Poirot said quietly. "But he is not the only one. The ledger, it is the key, but it is not the whole story. We must look to the smallest detail, the glove, the clock, the broken glass. They point to a contradiction, Hastings, a flaw in the killer's plan." Back in the library, Poirot paused by the desk, his fingers brushing the inkwell. "Regardez, Hastings. The ink is fresh, but the pen is dry. Sophie wrote her letter, but not with this pen. Where is it?" Hastings scanned the room, his eyes falling on the hearth. "Could it be there?" He pointed to a faint glinting object among the ashes. Poirot retrieved it with his handkerchief, a silver fountain pen, its nib stained with ink. "Magnifique," Poirot said, holding it up. "This pen wrote the letter, the note on the blotter. And it was hidden. Why? Because it points to the killer." Hastings felt a surge of excitement. "Whose pen is it, Poirot?" Poirot's smile was cryptic. "That, mon ami, we shall discover. But first we must watch the guests. The clue, it is small, but it speaks loudly. The killer, they are nervous now, for Hercule Poirot is close." As the clock struck 4, the library seemed to pulse with secrets, each detail a thread in the late afternoon light cast long shadows across Ravenwood Hall. The grey clouds outside, mirroring the growing unease within. The guests, confined to the house by the relentless rain and Inspector Crowley's orders, moved with the cautious deliberation of those who knew they were being watched. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated in the drawing room with his notebook, felt the weight of the mystery pressing ever heavier. Sophie Marwood's murder had cracked the polished facade of the gathering, and now, as Hercule Poirot's investigation deepened, secrets long buried were beginning to surface, like bones unearthed by a storm. Poirot, ever the maestro of observation, had spent the day weaving between the library and the guests' rooms, his sharp eyes missing nothing. The discovery of the ledger fragment, the silver fountain pen, and the cryptic note on the blotter had set his little grey cells ablaze. Hastings, though accustomed to Poirot's methods, could sense that his friend was closing in on a truth that would shake the foundations of Ravenwood Hall. Yet the guests, each with their carefully constructed alibis, seemed determined to obscure that truth with a web of lies. The drawing room was a tableau of strained civility. Lady Beatrice Ashburn sat by the window, her fan moving rhythmically, though her eyes darted to the door with every sound. Dr. Malcolm Finch and his wife Clara occupied a corner, he fidgeting with his spectacles, she sketching with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Victor Crane paced near the fireplace, his fiancée Evelyn Ward clinging to his arm, her face pale and drawn. Mrs. Lavinia Holt, the novelist, scribbled notes in a leather-bound journal, her Gothic imagination no doubt spinning tales from the tragedy. Thomas Redfern, the solicitor, sat apart, his expression as unreadable as ever. Sir Reginald, the host, was absent, having retreated to his study with a bottle of brandy. Poirot entered, his small frame commanding the room's attention despite the simplicity of his black suit and polished shoes. His moustache was impeccable, his demeanor serene, but Hastings knew that beneath this calm exterior
lay a mind dissecting every word, every gesture. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished oak. The investigation progresses. The little grey cells, they have uncovered much, but there is more to learn. Secrets, they are like shadows, hidden until the light falls upon them. Lady Beatrice's fan paused. Mr. Poirot, must we endure these theatrics? If you have evidence, present it to Inspector Crowley and be done with it. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Evidence, madam. I have it in abundance. The glove, the broken glass, the tampered clock, the ledger fragment. But evidence without understanding is like a map without a destination. I seek the why, the how, the who, and I believe some of you know more than you have said.
Crane stopped pacing, his voice sharp. You're accusing us again, Poirot. I told you Evelyn and I were together. We didn't see anything. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Together, toujours, Monsieur Crane? Yet Mademoiselle Ward's hands, they tremble when you speak. And you, monsieur, your eyes avoid mine. What do you fear? Evelyn's grip on Crane's arm tightened, her voice barely audible. We're telling the truth, Mr. Poirot. Please, leave us alone. Poirot turned to Clara Finch, who had paused her sketching. Madame Finch, your drawings are most detailed. You sketched the chandelier at 8:30 last night, yes? Yet you saw Mademoiselle Marwood's distress. Did you see anything else? Perhaps someone following her? Clara's pencil slipped, leaving a jagged mark on the page. I didn't see anyone. I was focused on my sketch, but... She hesitated, her eyes flickering to her husband. I heard something, just before the scream, a rustle like fabric moving quickly. Dr. Finch's spectacles slipped down his nose.
Clara, you never mentioned this.
It was faint, Clara said, her voice trembling. I thought it was nothing. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Nothing, madame? In a murder, there is no such thing as nothing. A rustle, it could be the killer moving to the library. Who was near you at the time? Clara's eyes darted to Lady Beatrice, then away. I don't remember. Everyone was in the dining room. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. He turned to Mrs. Holt, whose pen had not stopped moving. Madame Holt, you are a writer of mysteries. You see the drama in life. What have you observed that you have not shared? Mrs. Holt's eyes sparkled with intrigue. Mr. Poirot, I've noticed many things. Lady Beatrice was unusually attentive to Victor Crane at dinner, though she denies it. And Mr. Redfern, his watch-checking is obsessive, don't you think? As for Sophie, she was clutching a piece of paper when she left the dining room. I couldn't see what it was, but it looked important. Redfern's voice was icy. My watch is a habit, Mrs. Holt, and I resent your insinuations. Poirot raised a hand for silence. Merci, Madame Holt. Your eyes, they are sharp. And you, Monsieur Redfern, your watch, it is precise, yes? Yet the library clock was tampered with. Why? Redfern's jaw tightened. I know nothing about the clock. I was in the dining room, as I said. Poirot's smile was disarming. Of course, monsieur. But the ledger fragment, it mentions TR, a coincidence, perhaps? Redfern paled, his composure slipping. I don't know what you're talking about. Sophie's work was none of my concern. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling like dust. Hastings, watching closely, saw the cracks in the guests' facade, perhaps all of them. Poirot excused the guests, asking them to remain in the house. As they dispersed, he beckoned Hastings to the library. Mon ami, he said, his voice low. The lies, they multiply, but one lie, it is louder than the others. The rustle Madame Finch heard, it is a clue, but it is not enough. We must find the paper Mrs. Holt saw in Sophie's hand. They returned to the library, where the air still carried the faint scent of blood and whiskey. Poirot moved to the desk, his fingers tracing the edges of the blotter. The ledger fragment, the pen, the note, they all point to a secret Sophie uncovered. But the paper she held at dinner, it is missing. The killer took it, or destroyed it. Hastings frowned. Could it be the letter we found in her room, the one about betrayal? No, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. That was a draft, hidden away. The paper Mrs. Holt saw was in plain sight, clutched tightly. It was something Sophie meant to show, perhaps to Sir Reginald. Poirot's gaze fell on the hearth, where the ashes of the previous night's fire remained. He sifted through them with a poker, his movements careful. "Regardez, Hastings!" He held up a charred fragment of paper, its edges blackened, but a few words still legible. Payment, VC, concealed. Hastings' heart raced. Another piece of the ledger? And VC again? Victor Crane? Perhaps, Poirot said, slipping the fragment into an envelope. But the killer, they tried to burn it. They fear what it reveals, and the rustle Madame Finch heard, it suggests someone followed Sophie to the library, someone who knew what she carried. As the clock struck 5, the library seemed to close in around them, its secrets whispering from every corner. Hastings felt a chill, not from the draughty windows, but from the certainty that the killer was growing desperate. Poirot's net was tightening, and the lies, once carefully woven, were beginning to unravel. But whose secret had Sophie died to protect? And who among the guests was willing to kill to keep it hidden? Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The rain had ceased at Ravenwood Hall, leaving the air heavy with damp and the faint scent of wet earth. The late afternoon light, now breaking through the clouds, cast a golden hue across the drawing room, where the guests sat in a fragile truce, their faces etched with the strain of confinement and suspicion. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the window, felt the weight of the past 2 days pressing upon him. Sophie Marwood's murder had unravelled the polite veneer of the champered clock. Each clue pointed to a secret Sophie had uncovered, a secret worth killing for. But it was in the drawing room as the clock struck 6 that the investigation reached an emotional turning point, a moment when the masks of the guests began to slip, revealing raw truths beneath their carefully crafted lies. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small frame radiating authority. His green eyes, sharp as ever, moved from face to face, noting the tension in Lady Beatrice Ashbourne's rigid posture, the nervous twitch in Dr. Malcolm Finch's fingers, the haunted look in Clara Finch's eyes. Victor Crane's bravado had faded, his pacing replaced by a restless stillness, while Evelyn Ward clung to him, her face pale with fear. Mrs. Lavinia Holt's pen scratched furiously, her Gothic imagination feeding on the drama, and Thomas Redfern sat with his usual precision, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Sir Reginald, pale and dishevelled, had joined the group, his earlier retreat to brandy abandoned. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice smooth but carrying an edge of steel, "we stand at a crossroads. Mademoiselle Marwood's death was no act of chance. She was killed because she knew a secret recorded in a ledger, a secret someone in this room would kill to protect. I have found fragments of this truth, the paper in the ashes, the note on the blotter, the initials VC and TR. But now I ask for honesty. Who among you will speak?" The room was silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire. Then, to everyone's surprise, Clara Finch stood, her sketchbook falling to the floor with a soft thud.
Her delicate frame trembled, and her voice, usually a whisper, rang out with unexpected force. "I can't bear it any more," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I saw something, Mr. Poirot. I lied before, and I'm sorry. I saw Sophie leave the dining room, and someone followed her." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Dr. Finch reached for her, his face ashen. "Clara, what are you saying?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Madame Finch, this is most significant. Who did you see?" Clara's gaze dropped to the floor, her hands twisting together. "It was dark in the corridor, and I only saw a shadow, a figure in a long coat, moving quickly after Sophie. I thought it was nothing, just someone going to the library. But, after the scream, I knew it was more." Her voice broke, and she covered her face with her hands. "I should have said something sooner. I was afraid." Dr. Finch stood, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "Clara, why didn't it? You're putting us all in danger." Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Calm, Doctor. Madame Finch has given us a piece of the puzzle. A figure in a long coat, you say, Madame. Can you describe it further?" Clara shook her head.
Their face. But the coat, it was dark, maybe black, with a high collar. "I am so sorry, Mr. Poirot. I was scared." Poirot's expression was gentle but probing. "Fear, Madame, is understandable. But truth, it is our ally. You have done well to speak now. Tell me, where were you when you saw this figure?" "By the dining room window," Clara said, her voice steadier now. "I stepped into the corridor to get a better view of the chandelier for my sketch. That's when I saw them." The other guests stirred, their unease palpable. Victor Crane's voice cut through the tension, sharp and defensive. "A long coat. That could be anyone. You're making this up, Clara, to throw suspicion elsewhere." Evelyn Ward clutched his arm, whispering, "Victor, please." Lady Beatrice's fan snapped shut. "This is absurd. Clara, you've been sketching and daydreaming. You're imagining things." Mrs. Holt, ever the dramatist, leaned forward. "A shadowy figure in a long coat. It's like something from one of my novels. Mr. Poirot, do you think it was the killer?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, Madame Holt, but we must consider all possibilities. A long coat is common attire, yet it narrows our field. Tell me, Madame Finch, was this figure tall or short, man or woman?" Clara hesitated, her brow furrowed. I couldn't tell. They moved so quickly and the light was dim. But they were tall, I think. Taller than Sophie." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "Merci, Madame. Your courage has given us much to consider." The room erupted in accusations. Dr. Finch turned on his wife, his voice low but intense. "Clara, why didn't you tell me? You've made us all look guilty." Thomas Redfern, his composure cracking, stood abruptly. "This is nonsense, Poirot. A shadow in a coat. It proves nothing. You're chasing ghosts." Sir Reginald, his voice hoarse, spoke for the first time. "Enough. Sophie's dead, and you're all tearing each other apart. Mr. Poirot, what does this mean?" Poirot's gaze was steady. "It means, Sir Reginald, that someone in this house followed Mademoiselle Marwood to the library. Someone knew what she carried. A paper, a truth. And they acted to silence her. The ledger, the initials, the pen, they all point to a motive rooted in betrayal. Madame Finch's confession confirms it. The killer was among you, in the dining room, before the scream." The room fell silent, the weight of Clara's words settling like a fog. Hastings, watching from his corner, felt his heart race. Clara's admission had shifted the investigation, turning suspicion inward with
"The pieces, they fit, but the picture is not yet clear. I ask you all to reflect. What did Sophie know that was worth her life. As the guests dispersed, their faces a gallery of fear, guilt, and defiance. Clara remained, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Dr. Finch hesitated, then placed a hand on her arm, his anger giving way to concern. Hastings approached Poirot, his voice low. "Clara's confession, it's a breakthrough, isn't it? Someone followed Sophie. We're close, Poirot." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot said, his eyes distant. "But close is not enough. The figure in the coat, the tampered clock, the missing paper, these are threads in a tapestry of deception. The killer, they are shaken now, for Madame Finch has seen more than they wished. We must be vigilant, for they will act again to protect their secret." As the clock struck 7, the drawing-room emptied, leaving only the echo of Clara's confession. Hastings felt the mystery tightening around them, the truth hovering just out of reach. The emotional weight of Clara's revelation had cracked the facade of Ravenwood Hall, but the killer remained a shadow, their identity concealed by lies that were beginning to fray. Chapter 9. The Trap. The evening at Ravenwood Hall descended with an oppressive stillness, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and the lingering tension of Clara Finch's confession. The guests, now acutely aware of the shadow cast by Sophie Marwood's murder, moved with the cautious deliberation of those who knew they were being watched, not only by Hercule Poirot's piercing gaze, but by each other. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated in the drawing-room, felt the weight of the investigation pressing ever heavier. Clara's revelation of a shadowy figure in a long coat had cracked the facade of civility, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct, was ready to exploit that fracture. The library, where Sophie had met her end, remained the heart of the mystery, its shelves and shadows holding secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot had spent the day piecing together the clues, the ledger fragment, the charred paper, the silver pen, the tampered clock, and now Clara's account of a figure following Sophie. Each piece pointed to a motive rooted in betrayal, a secret Sophie had uncovered that had cost her life. Hastings knew that Poirot was preparing to spring a trap, a psychological maneuver to force the killer's hand. As the clock struck 8, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room, the same room where Sir Reginald had begun his cryptic speech the previous night. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls, and the gas lamps glowed softly, illuminating the strained faces of the assembly. Lady Beatrice Ashbourne sat with her fan closed, her posture rigid. Dr. Malcolm Finch,
Evelyn Ward, whose eyes darted nervously. Mrs. Lavinia Holt scribbled in her journal, her expression a mix of intrigue and apprehension. Thomas Redfern, the solicitor, maintained his usual composure, though his fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. Sir Reginald, his face haggard, stood near the fireplace, his eyes fixed on Poirot. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant, "we are gathered tonight to confront the truth. Mademoiselle Marwood was murdered because she knew a secret recorded in a ledger, a secret that threatens someone in this room. I, Hercule Poirot, have uncovered much, but the killer remains hidden, cloaked in lies. Tonight we shall lift that cloak." The guests stirred, their unease palpable. Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. "Mr. Poirot, this is becoming tiresome. If you have evidence, present it to Inspector Crowley and end this charade." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A charade, madame? No, this is no game. The ledger fragment, the charred paper, the silver pen, the tampered clock, these are not charades. They are the language of murder. And now we have a new clue. A figure in a long coat seen by Madame Finch following Mademoiselle Marwood to her death." Clara flinched, her eyes dropping to a sketchbook. Dr. Finch placed a protective hand on her shoulder, his voice tense. "You're putting Clara in danger, Poirot.
She's told you what she saw. Leave her be. Poirot's gaze was steady. Danger, Doctor? The danger is to the truth, which the killer seeks to bury, but I, Poirot, will not allow it. Tonight, I propose a test, a reconstruction of the moments before the murder. We shall return to the dining room, and each of you will take your place as you were at 8:40 last night when Mademoiselle Marwood left. A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand for silence. S'il vous plaît, this is necessary. The killer, they are clever, but they cannot hide from the little grey cells. Captain Hastings, you will observe, and Inspector Crowley, you will ensure no one leaves. Crowley, standing by the door, nodded grudgingly. Fine, Poirot. But this better lead somewhere. The guests filed into the dining room, their movements reluctant. The long mahogany table was set as it had been the previous night, the silver gleaming under the chandelier's light. Poirot directed each guest to their seat, recreating the scene with meticulous care. Sir Reginald stood at the head, his face pale. Lady Beatrice sat to his right, her fan open now, moving slowly. Dr. Finch and Clara were near the centre, Victor and Evelyn at the far end, Mrs. Holt beside them, and Redfern opposite, his watch in hand. Poirot stood at the foot of the table, his eyes scanning the group. At 8:40, Mademoiselle Marwood left this room clutching a paper. Madame Finch saw a figure follow her, a tall figure,
letting the silence stretch, his gaze locking onto each guest in turn. Hastings, stationed by the door, watched closely, his heart pounding. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Then a soft rustle broke the silence, the sound of fabric, faint but unmistakable, coming from Lady Beatrice's direction. All eyes turned to her. She froze, her fan halting mid-motion. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped, but her voice trembled. "I moved my chair, that's all." Poirot's smile was gentle but unyielding. "A chair, madame, or perhaps a coat, hanging on the rack behind you. A long, dark coat with a high collar, yes?" Lady Beatrice's eyes widened, her composure slipping. "I don't know what you mean. I was here, in my seat, when Sophie left." Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but piercing. Yet Madame Finch heard a rustle, and now we hear it again. "And the glove, madame, the glove by the hearth. It is small, like yours. Did you wear it last night, perhaps to avoid leaving fingerprints on the letter opener?" The room erupted in gasps. Victor Crane pointed a finger. "You're accusing her. That's ridiculous. Beatrice wouldn't—" "Silence, Monsieur Crane," Poirot said sharply. "The truth, it is close. Madame Ashbourne, you spoke of revising Sir Reginald's will. Did Mademoiselle Marwood know something about it, something you wished to keep hidden?" Lady Beatrice's face drained of colour, her fan falling to the table. "This is outrageous. I had no reason to harm Sophie. She was nothing to me." Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "Beatrice, tell him the truth. If you know something, for God's sake, speak." Lady Beatrice's eyes darted to Sir Reginald, then to Poirot. For a moment it seemed she would hold firm, but then her shoulders slumped and her voice broke. I followed her to the library. Not to kill her, I swear. I saw her take a paper from Reginald's desk earlier that day. I thought she was stealing, or worse, betraying him. I wanted to confront her. The room was silent, the weight of her confession hanging heavy. Hastings felt his pulse quicken. Was this the breakthrough they needed? Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And what happened in the library, madame?" Lady Beatrice's voice trembled. "I found her there, holding the paper. She was reading it, muttering about betrayal. I demanded to know what it was, but she refused to say. We argued, and I grabbed her arm. She pulled away and the chair fell. I left her there, alive, I swear. I heard the scream moments later from the dining room." Poirot studied her, his expression unreadable. "You left her alive, madame? Yet the paper is gone, and she is dead. And the coat, where is it now?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, then gestured to the rack by the door. "There. It's mine. But I didn't kill her, Mr. Poirot. You must believe me." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to the coat, a long dark garment with a high collar. "We shall see, madame. The truth, it is stubborn. It will not be denied." As the guests were dismissed, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion, Hastings approached Poirot. "Is she telling the truth, Poirot? Did she only argue with Sophie?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "She tells part of the truth, mon ami, but not all. The coat, the rustle, the argument, these are pieces of the puzzle. But the killer, they are still hidden, watching us. The trap, it has shaken them. Now, we wait for their next mistake." As the clock struck 9, Ravenwood Hall seemed to hold its breath, the trap set and the killer cornered, though their identity remained a shadow in the flickering light. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The night at Ravenwood Hall was cloaked in an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house and the distant howl of the wind. The drawing room, where the guests had gathered for Hercule Poirot's dramatic reconstruction, was now empty, save for Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings. The emotional weight of Lady Beatrice Ashbourne's confession lingered, her admission of following Sophie Marwood to the library a crack in the facade of the group's carefully constructed alibis. Yet Poirot, with his unerring instinct, knew that the truth was still obscured, the killer hidden behind a veil of half-truths and misdirection. Tonight, he would lay bare the heart of the mystery. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his small frame illuminated by the flickering flames, his green eyes sharp with purpose. Hastings, seated in an armchair, felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The clues, the ledger fragment, the charred paper, the silver pen, the tampered clock, the glove, and now Lady Beatrice's long coat had woven a complex tapestry. Poirot's trap had shaken the guests, but the final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant. "The time has come. The killer, they are clever, but they have made mistakes. The little grey cells, they have worked tirelessly, and now we shall reveal the truth. Gather the guests, s'il vous plaît. The dining room. It is the stage for our dénouement." Hastings nodded, his heart pounding as he summoned the guests. They filed in, their faces a gallery of apprehension and defiance. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, his eyes bloodshot, took his place at the head of the table. Lady Beatrice, her composure frayed, sat rigidly, her fan clutched tightly. Dr. Malcolm Finch and Clara, pale and silent, sat close together, her sketchbook abandoned. Victor Crane, his bravado gone, stood with Evelyn Ward, whose trembling hands betrayed her fear. Mrs. Lavinia Holt, her journal open, watched with eager anticipation, commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "A crime has been committed in this house, a crime of calculation, of betrayal, of desperation. Mademoiselle Sophie Marwood was murdered because she knew a secret recorded in a ledger, a secret that threatened ruin. Tonight I, Hercule Poirot, will reveal the killer." A hush fell, the only sound the crackling fire. Poirot's eyes swept the room, lingering on each face. Let us begin with the facts. At 8:40 p.m., Mademoiselle Marwood left this dining room clutching a paper. Madame Finch saw a figure in a long coat follow her. At 8:47, a scream was heard, and Sophie was found dead in the library, a letter opener in her chest. The clock was tampered with, reading 8:42 to confuse the timeline. A glove was left by the hearth, a whiskey glass broken, a ledger fragment hidden, and a paper burned. These are not random. They are the signature of a meticulous mind. Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. "You said all this, Mr. Poirot. Get to the point." Poirot's smile was serene. "Patience, madam. The point, it is this. Sophie Marwood
discovered a ledger detailing payments to VC and TR, large sums, concealed from Sir Reginald's accounts. She wrote of betrayal, intending to warn him, but someone acted to silence her. Victor Crane's face reddened. "You're looking at me, aren't you? Those initials, VC, I had nothing to do with it. I'm no thief." Poirot raised a hand. "Calm, Monsieur Crane. The initials, they are a clue, but not the whole story. Let us examine the timeline. Sophie left at 8:40. Madame Ashburn admits she followed, argued with Sophie, and left her alive. The scream came at 8:47, 7 minutes, a narrow window, but enough for murder." Dr. Finch adjusted his spectacles nervously. "But who was in the library during those 7 minutes?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "An excellent question, Doctor. Let us consider the clues. The glove, small and leather, fits no one perfectly, yet it was left deliberately to suggest a woman's hand. The whiskey glass, broken not by accident, but to stage a struggle. The clock, set back 5 minutes to create a false alibi. And the pen, the silver pen found in the ashes with Sophie's ink on its nib." He paused, producing the pen from his pocket. "This pen,
TR. Payment to you, concealed from Sir Reginald. Sophie discovered your embezzlement, did she not? You were siphoning funds from Sir Reginald's accounts, and she was about to expose you." The room erupted in gasps. Sir Reginald's voice was a growl. "Redfern, is this true?" Redfern stood, his voice trembling. I handled your accounts, Reginald, but I swear I didn't kill her. Yes, I took money, small amounts, to cover debts. Sophie found out, but I begged her to stay quiet. She agreed." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Did she, monsieur? Or did you ensure her silence? You were in the dining room, yes, but you checked your watch at 8:45, moments before the scream. You had time to slip out, follow Sophie, and strike." Redfern shook his head frantically. "No, I was with Finch. Ask him." Dr. Finch nodded, his voice unsteady. "He was with me, discussing a contract. He didn't leave." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Yet the rustle Madame Finch heard suggests someone did. And the coat? Madame Ashbourne's coat, yes, but it was worn by another. Someone tall, as Madame Finch described. Someone who knew the library well." His gaze shifted to Clara Finch, who froze, her eyes wide. "Madame Finch," Poirot said softly, "you are the artist, the observer. You saw the figure in the coat, but you did not tell all. You wore the coat, did you not? You followed Sophie, and you killed her." Clara's sketchbook fell, her hands trembling. No, that's not true." Poirot stepped closer, his voice relentless. "You wore Madame Ashbourne's coat, left carelessly on the rack. You followed Sophie, knowing she had the ledger fragment. You stabbed her with the letter opener, wiped it clean, and left the glove to mislead. You broke the glass to stage a struggle, set back the clock to confuse the timeline. But the pen, madame, it was your mistake. You used Redfern's pen, left in the library, and hid it in the ashes, hoping it would burn." Clara's face crumpled, tears streaming. "I didn't mean to. She was going to ruin us. Malcolm's debts, my paintings, they were all tied to Redfern's scheme. Sophie was going to tell Reginald everything." Dr. Finch gasped, his spectacles falling to the table. "Clara, no!" Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "You acted to protect your husband, madame, but you took a life. The ledger, it was your undoing." Crowley stepped forward, his face grim. "Mrs. Finch, you're under arrest." As Clara was led away, sobbing, the room and cold, over Ravenwood Hall, the clouds hanging low as if mourning the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The grandeur of the estate, once a symbol of elegance and privilege, now felt hollow, its polished surfaces reflecting the weight of betrayal and loss. The guests, shaken by the revelation of Clara as Sophie Marwood's killer, moved through the house with a subdued air, their voices hushed, their eyes avoiding one another. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated in the drawing room with a cup of lukewarm tea, felt the emotional toll of the past days. The mystery had been solved, but the cost was heavy, and the echoes of Clara's tearful admission lingered in his mind. Hercule Poirot, ever the calm center in the storm, stood by the window, his small frame silhouetted against the pale light. His mustache was as impeccable as ever, his black suit pristine, but there was a quiet gravity in his expression that Hastings recognized, a sign that Poirot was reflecting not only on the case, but on the human frailties it had exposed. The little Belgian detective had unraveled the web of lies with his characteristic precision. But now, as the dust settled, he turned his thoughts to the deeper truths beneath the crime. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. "You are troubled, yes? The solution, it is complete, yet it leaves a bitterness in the heart." Hastings set his cup down, his brow furrowed. "It's just Clara, Poirot. She seemed so fragile, so gentle. I never would have suspected her. And to think she killed Sophie to protect her husband, it's tragic." Poirot nodded, his green eyes thoughtful. "Oui, Hastings, it is tragic. The human heart, it is capable of great love and great destruction. Madame Finch acted out of desperation to shield her husband from ruin. But in doing so, she took a life, and that is a wound that cannot be undone." Hastings leaned forward, his voice low. "But how did you know, Poirot? The glove, the pen, the clock, there were so many clues, so many suspects. What made you certain it was Clara?" Poirot's smile was faint, almost wistful. The little grey cells, mon ami. They see what the eyes cannot. The glove, it was small, but it did not fit Lady Beatrice perfectly, nor Evelyn Ward. It was a deliberate misdirection, yet it pointed to a woman. The pen, engraved with TR, was meant to implicate Monsieur. When Sophie left, she was watching, waiting, and then she followed, wearing Lady Beatrice's coat to obscure her identity. Hastings shook his head, marveling.
"It's incredible, Poirot. You saw through it all. The red herrings, the lies. But why did Clara break down? Why confess?"
Poirot's expression softened. "The heart, Hastings. It cannot bear the weight of guilt forever. Madame Finch is an artist, a soul sensitive to beauty and pain. To kill, even for love, was a burden too great. When I set the trap, recreating the scene, her emotions betrayed her. The rustle of the coat, the pressure of my questions, it was too much. The truth, it demands to be heard." The door opened, and Sir Reginald Ashbourne entered, his face etched with exhaustion. Mr. Poirot, he said, his voice heavy, I owe you my thanks. You've uncovered the truth, though it's a bitter one. Clara, I never suspected her. And Sophie, she was like family. To think this was about money, about betrayal. Poirot inclined his head. Monsieur, the betrayal was not only Clara's. Monsieur Redfern's embezzlement, the payments to VC, they were the spark. Sophie discovered the ledger, and she meant to warn you. Her loyalty cost her life. Sir Reginald's shoulders slumped. I trusted Redfern. And Clara! Malcolm's debts must have driven her to it. I should have seen the signs. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. Do not blame yourself, Sir Reginald. The human heart, it is complex. We see only what others allow us to see, until the truth is forced into the light. As Sir Reginald left, his footsteps heavy, Inspector Crowley entered, his gruff demeanour softened by respect. You've done it again, Poirot. Clara's confessed fully. She's admitted to everything. The ledger, the pen, the coat. She's broken, poor woman. Says she couldn't live with the guilt. Poirot nodded. The guilt, it is a heavy chain, Inspector. But justice, it is served. Crowley hesitated, then added, There's one thing I don't understand. The payments to VC. Victor Crane swears he's innocent, but the ledger points to him. Poirot's eyes twinkled. A final red herring, Inspector. VC was not Victor Crane, but Vincent Caldwell, a business associate of Monsieur Redfern's, long since deceased. Redfern used his name to hide the transactions. Crane's temper and Evelyn's fear, they were distractions, nothing more. Crowley shook his head, a wry smile forming. You're a marvel, Poirot. I'll see to it that Clara's taken to Taunton. This case is closed, thanks to you. As Crowley, for me, I shall return to my quiet life, to my books and my tisane, but the little grey cells, they are never truly at rest. He turned, his expression serene. Come, Hastings. The train to London awaits. Let us leave Ravenwood Hall to its ghosts. As they gathered their things, Hastings felt a pang of melancholy. The mystery had been solved, the killer unmasked, but the cost was a reminder of human frailty, of love twisted into desperation, of trust betrayed. Poirot, sensing his friend's mood, placed a hand on his shoulder. Courage, mon ami. The world, it is not always kind, but it is always true, and we seek that truth, no matter the cost. They stepped out into the crisp morning air, the gravel crunching under their feet. The car waited to take them to the station, and as Ravenwood Hall receded into the distance, Hastings glanced back, its tall windows glinting like eyes that had seen too much. Poirot, beside him, was silent, his mind already turning to the next challenge, the next puzzle that would stir his little grey cells. The clock in the hall struck 11, its chimes fading into the wind. Ravenwood Hall was quiet once more, but its secrets, laid bare by Hercule Poirot, would linger in its stones forever. Chapter 12. The Unseen Motive. The train to London clattered along the tracks, its rhythmic sway a stark contrast to the turmoil that had consumed Ravenwood Hall. Captain Arthur Hastings sat opposite Hercule Poirot in their first-class compartment, the countryside blurring past the window in shades of green and grey. The resolution of Sophie Marwood's murder had left Hastings with a sense of closure, yet an undercurrent of unease lingered. Clara Finch's confession had been dramatic, her motives rooted in desperation to protect her husband, but something about the case nagged at him like a melody half-remembered. Poirot, however, seemed serene, his green eyes fixed on a distant point, his fingers steepled in quiet contemplation. Poirot, Hastings ventured, breaking the silence. You've solved the case.
And Clara's confessed, but I can't shake the feeling there's more to it. The ledger, the payments to VC and TR, it all seems too neat, too tied up. Was Clara really acting alone? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of amusement or perhaps approval. Mon ami, your instincts, they improve. The case, it is solved, oui. But the truth, it has layers like an onion. Clara Finch, she killed Mademoiselle Marwood. But the motive, it is deeper than we first thought. The little grey cells, they have not yet finished their work. Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. What do you mean? She confessed to protecting Dr. Finch's debts, tied to Redfern's embezzlement. Isn't that enough? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Enough for justice, perhaps, but not for truth. The ledger, it was the spark, but there is a
Notice about Madame Finch during her confession. Her tears, her trembling. Genuine, yes? Hastings frowned, recalling the scene. She was distraught, Poirot. Broken. Her confession felt raw, like she couldn't hold it in any longer. Précisément, Poirot said, his voice soft. But consider this. Her confession focused on her husband, on his debts. Yet the ledger fragment, it mentioned V.C., Vincent Caldwell, not Victor Crane, as we deduced. But there was another name. One we overlooked in the haste of the reveal. A name not in the ledger, but in Sophie's heart. Hastings blinked, puzzled. In her heart? You mean a personal motive? But Clara said it was about the money. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. Oui, the money was the surface, but beneath there is a deeper wound. Let us return in our minds to Ravenwood Hall. The library, the pen, the glove, these were clues, yes, but there was another detail, one I did not emphasize. The paper Sophie clutched at dinner, seen by Madame Holt. It was not the ledger fragment, nor the letter in her room. It was something else, a letter, perhaps, of a different kind. Hastings' mind raced. A letter? You mean a personal one, but we didn't find it. No, Poirot said, because it was taken or destroyed. But the blotter, Hastings, it held more than the words ledger and betrayal. There was a faint impression, almost invisible, of another word, love. Hastings gasped. Love? You're saying Sophie was involved with someone? And Clara killed her over jealousy? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Not jealousy, mon ami, but fear. Fear of exposure, not only of financial ruin, but of a secret that would destroy her marriage. Let me explain. The little grey cells, they have pieced together the unseen motive. He leaned back, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. Sophie Marwood was not merely Sir Reginald's secretary. She was a woman of intelligence and passion. She formed a connection, a forbidden one, with Dr. Malcolm Finch. It was discreet, hidden in stolen glances and whispered words. But Clara, the observant artist, saw it. Her sketches, they were not only of chandeliers and landscapes, they captured moments, emotions. She knew of her husband's affection for Sophie, and when Sophie discovered the ledger, it was not only Redfern's embezzlement she threatened to reveal, but also her own entanglement with Dr. Finch. Hastings' jaw dropped. An affair? But Clara never mentioned it. She said it was about the debts. Oui, Poirot said, because to admit the affair would be to admit her own pain. Clara killed Sophie not only to protect her husband's financial secrets, but to silence the woman who had stolen his heart. The letter followed her to the library, saw the letter, and in a moment of rage and fear, struck her down. Hastings shook his head, stunned. But the pen, the glove, the clock, how do they fit? The pen, Poirot said, was Redfern's, used by Clara to write a false note implicating him. The glove, taken from Lady Beatrice's coat, was left to suggest a woman's hand, but not Clara's own. The clock, tampered to confuse the timeline, ensured her alibi seemed solid. She staged the scene to look like a financial crime, hiding the personal motive beneath. Hastings leaned back, his mind reeling. So Clara's confession, it was only half the truth. Oui, Poirot said softly. She confessed to the act, but not the heart of her pain. The little grey cells, they saw the contradiction in her tears, not only guilt, but heartbreak. She loved her husband, and she killed to keep him, even as she lost him to his own indiscretions. The train whistle sounded, signalling their approach to London. Hastings stared out the window, the fields giving way to the city's sprawl. Will you tell Crowley, or Sir Reginald? Poirot shook his head. No, mon ami. The case is closed. The killer is in custody. To reveal the affair would only deepen the wounds of Ravenwood Hall. Clara's punishment is her own heart. And Dr. Finch, he must live with his guilt. The truth, it is known to us, and that is enough. Hastings nodded, though the weight of the revelation settled heavily. It's a sad business, Poirot. Love and betrayal, all tangled together. Poirot's eyes softened. The human heart, Hastings. It is both the source of our greatest joys and our deepest sorrows. We seek order, but life, it is messy. Yet, it is in this mess that the little grey cells find their purpose, to bring clarity where there is chaos. As the train pulled into the station, Poirot gathered his valise, his demeanour calm but reflective. Come, Hastings, London awaits, and with it, new challenges. But for now, let us leave Ravenwood Hall to its shadows. They stepped onto the platform, the bustle of the city enveloping them. Hastings glanced back at the train, as if it carried the ghosts of Ravenwood Hall. Poirot, ever forward-looking, walked briskly ahead, his mind already turning to the next puzzle. The unseen motive, now revealed, was a reminder of Poirot's genius, not only in solving crimes, but in understanding the fragile, flawed humanity at their core. The London air was sharp with the scent of coal smoke and damp pavement. Killer unmasked. Yet the emotional reverberations lingered, like ripples on a pond after a stone has sunk. Poirot, ever the picture of composure, walked with his usual brisk pace, his valise swinging lightly at his side, but his green eyes held a contemplative depth that suggested the case was not entirely behind him. They settled into a small tea-room near the station, its warm glow a welcome respite from the chill. Hastings ordered tea, while Poirot predictably requested a tisane, his preference for herbal infusions as unshakable as his moustache. As they waited, Hastings broke the silence, his voice low. Poirot, I keep thinking about Ravenwood Hall. Clara's confession, the affair with Dr. Finch, it explains so much, but there's something unfinished. Why did Sophie write that letter to Sir Reginald? And what about the other guests? Were they all just bystanders? Poirot sipped his tisane, his expression serene but thoughtful. Mon ami, you are perceptive. The case, it is solved, yet the echoes of truth, they linger. Mademoiselle Marwood's letter, it was not merely a confession of her feelings for Dr. Finch, but a warning to Sir Reginald of the betrayal in his house, both financial and personal. She was a woman of conscience, torn between loyalty and love. Hastings frowned, stirring his tea. But why risk everything? If she loved Finch, why expose him? Poirot's fingers brushed his moustache, a familiar gesture. Love, Hastings, it is complex. Sophie Marwood was loyal to Sir Reginald, her employer, who treated her with kindness, almost as a daughter. She discovered Monsieur Redfern's embezzlement, the payments to V.C., Vincent Caldwell, a ghost used to mask the theft. But she also knew of her own indiscretion with Dr. Finch, a married man. The letter, it was her attempt to make amends, to clear her conscience before revealing the truth. She did not expect Clara to act so decisively. Hastings leaned back, his mind turning over the details. And the other guests, Lady Beatrice, Victor Crane, Evelyn, Mrs. Holt, were they all innocent? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Innocent? No, mon ami. No one at Ravenwood Hall was truly innocent. Each carried secrets, motives, desires. Lady Beatrice, she coveted Sir Reginald's fortune, fearing changes to his will. Her argument with Sophie was real, though not fatal. Victor Crane, his temper and business dealings made him a suspect, but his guilt was only in his arrogance. Evelyn Ward, she clung to Crane out of fear of losing him. House of Mirrors. Each guest reflecting their own fears and desires. Clara's act was the culmination, but the seeds were sown by all. The little grey cells, they saw the pattern, the glove, the pen, the clock, the ledger. Each clue was a thread in Clara's heart. It was the knot that tied them together. The tea-room's clock chimed 4. Its gentle notes, a reminder of the tampered clock in the library. Hastings thought of Clara, now in custody, her delicate frame broken by guilt and heartbreak. What will happen to her, Poirot, and Dr. Finch? Their lives are ruined. Poirot's expression grew sombre. Madame Finch, she will face justice, though her punishment is already in her soul. Dr. Finch, he must live with the knowledge that his indiscretions drove his wife to murder. Their marriage, it is shattered, but life, it continues. They will carry their scars, as will Sir Reginald, who trusted those who betrayed him. Hastings sighed, his tea growing cold. It's a grim picture, Poirot. I suppose that's the cost of truth. Oui, Poirot said softly, but truth, it is the foundation of order. Without it we are lost in chaos. The little grey cells, they seek clarity, even when it pains the heart. A young waiter approached, clearing their cups, and Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where London's bustle unfolded. Hastings, do you know why I pursue these cases, even in retirement? It is not for glory, nor for fame. It is for the balance, the harmony of justice. When a life is taken, the world is out of alignment. I, Hercule Poirot, restore that balance, one clue at a time. Hastings smiled, warmed by his friend's conviction. You're a marvel, Poirot. Ravenwood Hall was a puzzle, and you solved it, with nothing but your wits. Poirot's moustache twitched with a hint of pride. The wits, mon ami, and the little grey cells, they are never idle, even in the quiet of a tea-room. As they rose to leave, Hastings felt a sense of resolution, though the echoes of Ravenwood Hall lingered. The case had revealed not only a murderer, but the fragility of human bonds, love twisted into betrayal, loyalty undone by fear. Poirot, ever the guardian of truth, had brought clarity to the chaos, but the cost was a reminder of the shadows that lurk in even the most polished hearts. They stepped into the London dusk, the city's lights flickering to life. Poirot adjusted his hat, his step light but purposeful. "Come, Hastings," he said, his voice brightening. "There is a concert at the Royal Albert Hall this evening. Music, it soothes the soul after such dark matters. And perhaps activity." The streets aglow with gaslights,
and the chatter of passers-by. But Captain Arthur Hastings's thoughts remained tethered to Ravenwood Hall. The tea-room conversation with Hercule Poirot had illuminated the deeper layers of Sophie Marwood's murder, revealing Clara Finch's motives as a tangled blend of financial desperation and personal betrayal. Yet, as they walked toward the Royal Albert Hall, Hastings sensed that Poirot was not entirely at ease. The little Belgian detective's green eyes, though bright with the anticipation of music, held a flicker of preoccupation, as if a final piece of the puzzle lingered just out of reach. They settled into their seats at the concert hall, the strains of a Beethoven symphony filling the air, but Hastings could not fully surrender to the music. "Poirot," he whispered, leaning close, "you said the case was solved, but I can't help feeling there's something we've missed. Sophie's letter, the one she meant for Sir Reginald. We never found it, did we?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his voice barely audible over the swelling strings. "Mon ami, your instincts, they sharpen. Oui, the letter, it is the missing thread. The ledger, the pen, the glove, they told the story of the crime. But the letter, it was Sophie's voice, her final act. I suspect it holds a truth we have not yet fully grasped." Hastings frowned, puzzled. But Clara took it, didn't she? Or destroyed it? Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light of the hall. "Perhaps, Hastings, but the little grey cells, they are restless. Clara confessed to the murder, to protecting her husband, but the letter. She spoke only of the ledger. Why not mention the letter of love, if she saw it? There is a contradiction, no?" The music swelled, a crescendo that mirrored Hastings's racing thoughts. "You think someone else took it? But who, and why?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "That, mon ami, is what we must discover. Tomorrow, we return to Ravenwood Hall. The truth, it hides in the shadows, but it will not escape Hercule Poirot." The next morning, they boarded an early train back to Somerset, the countryside passing in a blur of green and gold. Ravenwood Hall loomed as they approached, its Georgian facade no less imposing but now tinged with melancholy. The guests had departed, save for Sir Reginald, who remained to settle affairs, and Inspector Crowley, who was finalizing his report. The house felt emptier, its grandeur hollowed by the tragedy. Sir Reginald greeted them in the drawing-room, his face etched with fatigue. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," he said, his voice heavy. "I didn't expect to see you again. Clara's confession was not found in the library or her room. Do you know of it?" Sir Reginald's eyes widened, then clouded with sorrow. "A letter? Sophie never mentioned. But she was always writing, organizing my affairs. If she wrote something personal, I never saw it." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. "Then we must search again, monsieur, the letter. It is the key to understanding the full truth." With Sir Reginald's permission, they returned to the library, its shelves and shadows now familiar, yet still foreboding. The blood-stained rug was gone, replaced by a fresh one, but the air held the memory of violence. Poirot moved to Sophie's desk, his fingers tracing the edges of the blotter, the inkwell, the papers. "The letter," he murmured. "It was not burned, not taken by Clara. It is here, hidden in plain sight." Hastings watched, his curiosity piqued. "But we searched everywhere, Poirot. The desk, the shelves, even the floorboards." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Not everywhere, mon ami. The mind, it hides what it does not expect to see." He turned to a small, ornate box on the desk, one Hastings had dismissed as a decorative trinket. Poirot opened it, revealing a false bottom. Inside was a folded letter, its edges worn but intact, addressed to Sir Reginald in Sophie's neat hand. Poirot unfolded it carefully, his voice soft as he read aloud. "Dear Sir Reginald, I write with a heavy heart, for I have betrayed your trust. I have discovered a ledger revealing payments to VC and TR, funds stolen from your accounts by Mr. Redfern. But I am also guilty, for I have formed an affection for Dr. Finch, a married man. I cannot continue in your service, knowing my disloyalty. I beg your forgiveness, and will reveal all tomorrow." Hastings' breath caught. She was going to confess everything. Redfern's embezzlement, her affair with Finch. No wonder Clara acted. Poirot nodded, slipping the letter into his pocket. "Oui, but there is more. The letter, it was hidden here. Not taken. Clara did not see it, or she would have destroyed it. Someone else hid it. Someone who knew its contents and wished to protect Sophie's memory, or their own." Hastings frowned. "But who? Redfern? He knew about the ledger." "No," Poirot said, his voice firm. "Redfern was a coward, not a murderer. The one who hid the letter was Sir Reginald himself." Hastings gasped. "Sir Reginald? But why?" Poirot's expression was somber. "He found the letter after the murder, perhaps when he entered the library before us. He read it, saw Sophie's confession, and hid it to protect her honor and his own. He loved her, Hastings, not as a daughter, but as a man loves a woman. Her affair with Finch, it—"
"Monsieur, you hid this, did you not? To protect Mademoiselle Marwood's memory and perhaps your own heart?" Sir Reginald's eyes filled with tears. I found it on her desk after she was gone. I couldn't let it be seen, Poirot. Sophie was everything to me. Her confession, it would have ruined her, even in death." Poirot's gaze softened. "Your love? It is understandable, but it delayed the truth. The letter confirms Clara's motive. She feared Sophie's exposure of both the affair and the embezzlement. You have no guilt in her death, but you must let her go." Sir Reginald nodded, his voice breaking. "I loved her, Poirot. I should have told her." As they left the drawing room, Hastings felt the weight of the revelation. "It's heartbreaking, Poirot. Sir Reginald's silence, Sophie's love, Clara's desperation, all of it led to this." "Oui," Poirot said, his voice quiet. "The heart, it drives us to great acts and great follies. The letter, it was the final echo of Sophie's truth, and now it is heard." They stepped into the crisp air, the car waiting to return them to the station. Ravenwood Hall stood silent behind them. Its secrets finally laid bare. The hidden correspondence had revealed the depth of Sophie's loyalty and Sir Reginald's unspoken love, tying the final knot in the tapestry of betrayal and loss. The train back to London rattled through the Somerset countryside, its steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the emotional tumult of Ravenwood Hall. The train back to London rattled through the Somerset countryside, its steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the emotional tumult of Ravenwood Hall. The train back to London rattled through the Somerset countryside, its steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the emotional tumult of Ravenwood Hall. The train back to London rattled through the Somerset countryside, its steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the emotional tumult of Ravenwood Hall. The train back to London rattled through the Somerset countryside, its steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the Redfern. Perform their part in a tragedy of love and betrayal. Hastings leaned forward, his voice low. Sir Reginald's love for Sophie, it changes everything, doesn't it? He hid the letter to protect her, but also to shield himself from the pain of her affection for Finch. It's so human. "Oui," Poirot said softly, his gaze drifting to the window. "The human heart. It is the greatest puzzle of all. Sophie Marwood sought to do right, to warn Sir Reginald of betrayal, both financial and personal.
Clara Finch, she killed to protect her husband, but also to guard her own heart from his infidelity. Sir Reginald, he loved in silence, and his silence became a shield. Each acted for love, yet love led to destruction. Hastings shook his head, marveling at the complexity. And the other guests, Lady Beatrice, Victor Crane, Evelyn, Mrs. Holt, they all had their secrets, didn't they? None of them were innocent. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Innocent? No, mon ami. Lady Beatrice coveted wealth. Her ambition cloaked in disdain. Victor Crane's bravado hid his fear of exposure, though his sins were minor. Evelyn Ward's loyalty to Crane was born of insecurity, not truth. And Madame Holt, her imagination wove stories from the pain around her. Even Redfern, the architect of the embezzlement, was but a coward, not a murderer. Ravenwood Hall was a mirror, reflecting the flaws of all who entered. The train's whistle sounded, a mournful note that seemed to echo the mood of the case. Hastings thought of the library, its shelves and shadows now silent, the blood-stained rug replaced, the letter opener removed. What will become of Ravenwood Hall, Poirot? And Sir Reginald? He's lost so much. Poirot's expression grew sombre. Sir Reginald, he will carry his grief, as all must who love and lose. The hall, it will stand, but its heart is broken. The guests will scatter, their lives altered by the truth we have uncovered. But life, it moves forward, and so must we. Hastings nodded, though the weight of the case lingered. You saw it all, Poirot. The glove, the pen, the clock, the letter. How do you do it? How do you see what no one else can? Poirot's smile was modest, though his eyes gleamed with quiet pride. The little grey cells, Hastings, they are my tools. But it is not only logic that solves a crime, it is understanding. The heart, it leaves clues as surely as the hand. The glove left to mislead, the pen hidden to implicate, the clock tampered to confuse, the letter concealed to protect. Each one served its purpose. To reveal Sir Reginald's heart would be to wound him further. The truth, it is known to us and to him. That is enough. Justice is served, and the rest, it belongs to the silence of Ravenwood Hall. They stepped onto the platform, the bustle of London enveloping them. The city was alive with possibility, its energy a stark contrast to the sombre stillness of the estate. Poirot adjusted his hat, his step light but purposeful. "Come, Hastings," he said, his voice brightening. "There is a café nearby with the finest tisane in London. And perhaps a new puzzle awaits us, no?" Hastings chuckled, following his friend into the crowd. "You're incorrigible, Poirot. After all this, you're already looking for the next case." Poirot's moustache twitched with amusement. "The world, it is full of mysteries, mon ami. And where there is mystery, there is Hercule Poirot, ready to bring order to chaos." As they walked through the streets, the lights of London flickering to life, Hastings glanced back at the train, as if it carried the ghosts of Ravenwood Hall. The case was closed, the truth laid bare, but its lessons of love, betrayal, and the fragile bonds that tie us would linger. Poirot, ever the guardian of clarity, led the way, his little grey cells ready for whatever challenge lay ahead, while Ravenwood Hall faded into memory, its secrets sealed within its ancient walls. Peaching.